Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues, architects and interior designers. My name is Xenia. I'm a general director of ENCON Vietnam, the company that became top 10 construction technology providers in 2019 in the Asian Pacific region. We proudly represent Archline XP in Vietnam and provide services and digitalizing for the engineering and design industries. As an architect and interior designer, I will proudly speak today about Archline XP for the interior design purposes. In the following 30 minutes, we will learn why Archline XP is better for interior design than any other digital solution represented today on the market. We will learn about the basics of creating interior design in Archline, starting from the mood board and reference. We will learn what it means to anchor the reference right to the file. And of course, we will go fast to the basics of the geometry, learning how to create your interior room or interior space. The details are also represented today in abundant functions, as well as we will create the materials. And of course, we will go through the animation 360 degrees option just to check how it works right for your ideas. We will discuss skylight as well as artificial light and how to apply the functions for your design. At the end, we will learn client's challenge and check the opportunities of Archline to create the interior design on the level of professional studios. And there is a bonus for those who stay with me until their webinar is over. Please prepare your questions. Let's get started with the question, why Archline XP? Most of my clients, they always ask to compare with Revit because that's what they know from the big companies. But if you actually Google today, you can find a lot of comparison left by their clients. And I would like to keep your attention and go through the Australian website of Archline just to find their answers why yes and why not. And one important thing, no specific tools dedicated to interior design are found in Revit. You also can find this in independent reviews as disadvantage, and it is marked by specialists that interior designers may find themselves feeling frustrated. So let's go and do that with Archline. When we start as a designer, that's usually finding reference, collecting the reference, and trying to put this reference into the folders that are collected with our files. So Archline XP allows you to keep all together, all documentation inside the software. So here's a file of the project we will go through today. It's a sample project that is on the stage of conceptual design. That's not the finalized one. And we will go through that, learning a little bit here and a little bit there. Now we take a look at the mood board that contains the files that you collect as a reference, and you can work with them quite easily, modifying all these files. Let's start creating a new one, and you see now we have in our documentation chart and the list of documents that we have two mood boards, and the sheet number 2 is just currently empty that I'm filling with files from outside. You can go with the files that you take right away from the software or locating the image, and you can modify this image. You can go through a scale or stretching, rotating, twisting it, whatever you need to do to keep the image in the order of your idea. You also can go and use just draw and drop. That's very easy to connect, and locate any reference you need. So now let's go and try what means to cut it with a crop function. It's very easy to do, so you can sometimes go for this option if you need. Mood board is created quite easy, and you also can print and save it. You also can add the color charts. And sometimes you need to go with follow-up functions. For example, during your process, you work with something and you find it necessary to save, and you also would like to keep it inside your file, as well as to correspond it probably with a similar image that you picked up from the reference. And that's very unhandy because you can send this file later to the client right away with a file, or just print it. It's always there. There is a wonderful option that you can find for interior design, so-called anchoring reference. That's an attachment of the reference to the objects that are inside the interior. In our case, for example, bathroom has this option, and you can find this as attached photo, or you can attach a new one. If you go, for example, to the basin, we will see that there is nothing attached. And let's check how it looks if we take a look what is attached to our sync table, and that's exactly what you can find. Very useful. So let's go and discuss our basics of geometry, and I will start from using the reference points that you can have, and usually locate this as a transparent paper or as a layer that is locked, and then you can look through and build on it, or you just use it as a reference. In my case, it was a ground floor that I locked, and I was working with a first floor. Here is just a conceptual design. That means we still have this working drafting process. We have all these lines that can kept in purpose, and now we can see how I can switch them off when I'm using the line layer created by me. And for example, we also can switch right away from here the ceiling that disturbs our viewing. So that's it. Cleaner and maybe more understandable for the client, just in one click. And from here you can continue to work. So talking about geometry, geometry is very similar to the CAD software you can find today, quite popular in the market, but it's created in a very intuitive way that you learn it quite faster and much more in much more intuitive way and much more easier for you. You do not concentrate on the functions of the software. You just know where the things are located and you use them. So you see that, for example, now we create the walls, and you can choose options and create spline or just follow up with a rectangular shape, what I'm actually doing. And then you can go on and correct your wall if you're not satisfied with this. It's very easy to do, even on the level of interior design, creating the material you need, or you also can think about documentation, how you will represent it. For example, the outlining or a hatch. I'm just deleting it here or creating this empty, and you see that now we have the file where we have different walls, but we need to make them the same, and it's very easy to do. Based on physical level and on 2D representation, we have completely different ones. So we just go to pick up similarities or properties, and in our case we have to copy everything if I would like to make the walls the same, absolutely, what I'm doing in one click. So we have it. The next stage we shall probably do the slab, or somebody starts with a slab, but it's easier to go with a slab when you have walls because it's automatically done. Same ways automatically we can create the ceiling, what just happened. Then we can move on to check what's going on with our building, or we can call this just a box, and our 3D perspective view. This is an axonometry view, not perspective yet, but we always can manage it very easily. We are navigating camera, and here it is. Now we have the perspective view. We can work both with axonometric view, or we also can work with perspective view, what actually I will do now. And I can locate the items, new elements right away here. This is done, of course, randomly for the current demonstration without any appropriate measurements, but the idea can be clear. So I'm locating a window that I can easily transform into different shape and a different construction, as well adding elements or removing elements, and just working with material as well. But I also can do that via 2D view, for example, creating now the door in the same way as it was done before, but in 2D. And if I'm not satisfied, I can go to the library element and just pick up any door that I find there, and even create my own and save it as a library element. It will take the measurements I decided before, or just offer you to create something that was going with the library parameters. Let's change the color and just see how easily you can design the item right in front of the property function. So here we are, we have two objects created in our walls. And now we go inside to fill the interior space, so locate ourselves inside. And we can talk already about the filling of the interior with some items. For this purpose, we can go and pick up lighting if we would like to choose the artificial lights, or we can go and pick elements, for example, through the warehouse. Or there is a vast catalog from the well-known brands, or the single object that is built inside the software with some elements that they already have there, or some elements that you have added before, and they all are parametric. Talking about objects, we have to talk about detailing and interior design. Detailing is always important. It's just how far their objects are represented. It's how far the skylight is represented, and you always have to add artificial light and turn it on during the daytime also. This is the main light and the reflections that you always have to keep eye on. Here we go to the master bedroom, and let's just review all these details in action. So I'm checking the lighting and I'm checking the lamps. It shall be turned on. Now we see that it's switched off. What we have to turn on much later when we talk about lights. Then I'm checking what's going on with designed wall. This is a customized wall, customized material. And we see that it's determined as fabric and nominated by texture as fabric. And very important to keep eye on the detail. That is bump, and here it's called scale. That means to create the visual effect for rendering that will bring more realistic view to your design. It's very important to understand that imperfection sometimes is very important, and you have to bring some items that have these imperfections either in color and texture or either in the shape. The elements for decoration you can pick up in the libraries or create yourself, and they play a very important role in understanding the interior design and seeing the more realistic attitude and bring also the feeling atmosphere that you need to have. So don't forget about that. Later on, we shall actually discuss much more about the cupboards and creating the furniture in Archline, because it's an amazing tool that you can find here. In my case, it is created in Archline as a separated element that is saved as a full construction. Later on, you can develop this and just let it go for the manufacturing with appropriate drawings. In our case, we just use it as a showcase in the interior design. That is a conceptual offer for the client. And you see how easily we can create the divisions. We can decide them on percentage, or you can decide them on the measurements that we really keep in our mind or based on our idea and drawing. And it's very easy to create within Archline. You also can go and correct the material or the structure. For example, you can decide what will be their construction: closed, open, drawers, some kind of a decor that will be located on the shelf that you also can create yourself, going basically on creating their profiles. There are also some elements like legs for their cupboards, shelves. There is also different accessoire that you can find and locate here, like handles or some metal piecing for closing inside. And of course, the construction pattern that shall be very important for those who work with furniture precisely. Maybe not sometimes important for those who go just with the interior representation, but you can still keep an eye on it. So that's it, and we have their shelf that is fully functional. You can check how it fits your interior design, and also the client can check if it satisfies or not. Another detail that is bringing the more realistic attitude to your interior design, this is of course soft furniture or curtain. In this case, curtain is a separated function, an opportunity in Archline where you can play around with how far you can open it, how far you can close it, how many folders are there, or how tense this curtain is. That's very useful because you can create different atmospheric views while you design, or switch from one way to another way, and you also can decide how this curtain is fixed to the wall or to the ceiling. What's quite important, because this is a very thoughtful design at the end. And if you decide it right from the beginning, you don't need to think so much during the construction phase. Later on, you can just decide your view. This is finding the dot where the perspective view that's more appropriate for your vision of the interior, or what you would like to show to the client, or details you would like to show to the client. Sometimes you have to go for different angles. This is a rendering that we got from this room. This is quite a small one, but quite enough to understand. Let's go to the guest bedroom. Very fast to look through. This is a little bit different design, tiny space, However, it still could be designed with textures, and we will stop and talk about textures in this room. Creating materials. Creating materials in Archline is quite an easy form. For example, let's take the existing one and locate this as painting on the wall. And it will be brick. It can be wallpaper, it can be stucco, it can be anything. And you decide how it will look in 3D or in rendering, because you have to decide the level of scaling, also called bump. You can decide how it's reflecting or not. This is very easy to set by yourself. But what's going on when you would like to have your own material? You just create it as a new one. You can copy some and be based on that, or you can create completely from the scratch. In this case, you just decide the folder where you save it. Then you go, for example, for the image that represents the texture and the look. In our case, we just pick up a very random one. This is a geometric pattern. And let's locate it and just try out how that will look if we just go with the general mode. That's what you see right away now. And how it will look if we go, for example, for a different approach. In our case, we pick up stretch. That means that whole image will be stretched to the wall. And we just pick up and check what's going on if there is, for example, metal structure. And you see the software immediately offers you the settings, so you don't need to think so far. Let's come back to general view, because that's how we see the wallpaper. And let's locate it on the wall as a painting in our case. One click and here it is. So you see. What if we decide to make this really like tiling, or let's really like small piecing and copy path structure? Then you just go and nominate the tiling function, and for example go on and say it's 45 degrees, what I'm doing just for demonstration, and here it is. Easy. Let's move further to the kitchen and living room. The kitchen and living room represents a holistic approach here. It's a little bit oriental view and design that the client wanted to see, combined with the simplicity of their European style, something like mixed up. We don't discuss it too much here, but we discuss animation at 360 degree. So let's define the paths of our animation right now. Draft drawing, we just use it as it is, because it's still a working process, and we still try to have the working process and all necessary material for our client in between meeting. So here we go and define the path of the same height. It's a little bit fast and it's a little bit strange when we have to go through the door. So let's make the correction and just say that we'll move slower. And then the next step, we go and define the door opening as closed. For this, it's very easy to go for representation or basic geometry and find the parameter where the opening angle was defined as 75. For demonstration now, it's 0. So let's check how the video is going on in this case. And here's an animation in circle. Pretty good for demonstration. What if we decide to go with a path and change the levels? And here it is. That's how it looks. We go straight and enter the room and go a little bit higher above sofa. We can save it and keep this video in the file. Creates just very fast after you have your path done inside the software. You also can go and render, but it takes some time, so be ready for that. Or better go for Archline XP Live. We'll keep up a little bit attention to that in our bonus. You also can go for creating panorama 360 or placing the hotspot, so-called the camera, inside there, inside your interior, and defining the area you would like to see as if you stand and go around, like I'm doing right away now, standing on the table. This is a check of the draft, and you can find its HTML file. It is saved. You also can use it in Keep. Then you have to go and decide what daytime and what sun position you would like to have for the final rendering of that way. And let's say when you have completely precise projects, you really know where the orientation of this building, and you have to follow this up. In our case, we go a little bit random for some kind of a view effect because we don't have this exact positioning. And we also decide the time is a little bit evening, early evening, so we have some kind of nice light going through inside the building, inside our interior. Don't forget that you have to switch on also artificial light to bring some atmospheric design, atmospheric ideas inside your final scene and view. And here we go and just create a virtual tour that is rendered mode. In our case, we use very minimized resolution, so keep this in mind. This is not the best option. This is just a very basic and minimal to demonstrate how far you can go with a fast mode and how far you can actually use this. So it's pretty defined. You can understand the location, you can understand the interior design already, and if you're satisfied with this view and you need more detail, you just go for the high resolution rendering with a highly detailed representation. Let's go on to the next chapter and discuss artificial lighting. Artificial lighting is quite an important part, one of the most important parts to know and keep eye on. If you don't know how the light works, you will not be able to create appropriate rendering and view. In my case, I'm working again with a master bedroom, and I'm going through the top view, checking how the light goes from the top to the bottom. I also check now whether my light sources, lamps, are turned on, and most of them are switched off, so I have to be careful and just check where they are on and not. But you also, of course, can go and do this via the layer or via the lighting source that is on the main menu and buttons. But for me, I just prefer to go this now step by step to demonstrate the change that you can have right after modifying the light source. When you work with lighting in perspective view right inside the software, I better recommend you to turn on the realistic view. It will be a little bit grayish like this, but on a contrastic way you can see how far the light falls this or that way. The light can be predefined as a direct, but you always can modify this right in 3D. For example, like it is done right away here, and change the direction if you need it for some purposes, or your light has this opportunity, for example, the lamp with a twisting bulb. You also can go and define the opening and radius with their light properties, light manager. And we can see here that we have the lamp itself and we have the light source attached. In my case, this is GE Lighting MR. This is a predefined light with a some pattern, and we also see the basic light that is LED 9 watts. That's actually bringing the light, but doesn't bring the spread of the light. Therefore, you have to learn very precisely what is what, and to learn how to use the combination of the lights for the effect on interior design and for the realistic light that's usually used in the real lamp. And I have to remind you that the lamp in real world and the lamp in artificial world, in our case in Archline, shall correspond actually. And if you don't know how the light works in the real world, you will probably make mistakes inside software. Exceptions are when you have to create artificially some effects or just manipulate with the imaging. So let's turn our lamp standing on the table for the TV, or in our case, this is for the picture. And we see that the light here is yellow. That means you can define the color, or you can pick up the bulb that has a light. However, if we go now, we see that this is just a dot, so we don't see the spread kind of effect around. For this purpose, I would like to pick up kind of a LED effects, or so-called IES sources. For this purpose, I had to make also the research of IES sources and identify which of them creates a certain effect that you can use for interior design. And as you see, it's kind of a multiple research, and I recommend you to go through and learn it yourself, do the same work, where you can identify how far you need to locate and mount the source to get this or this effect. Not to make a mistake when, for example, the light goes through the ceiling and shines from the second floor to the first floor, and also not to bring the super sharp shadows or the light. So in this case, let's pick up, for example, one bulb that is a standard bulb we can buy in the shop, locate, and as you see, there is nothing happening. So no spread, no effect. So therefore, I will go and pick up the first IES source, and immediately we see that there is a spread radius that I can correlate as I need it. In my case, I will make it narrower and smaller because I don't want the light to go all through all the table and just to be very bright on the floor. I want it just to shine through a little bit and create some nice atmospheric view on the surface of the table. That's it. So after you just manipulate it a little bit with lights, you go for rendering and go with a quick render that's actually a draft, in our case very small resolution and a very low detailed rendering, just to check how your interior design looks before you go for the big production. And we immediately see that we have actually some mistakes in the light. That means the location, the mounting of the source is incorrect. So I need to check what's going on there, and therefore I come back and start correcting that. And immediately we can see that the line going through from the source to the floor is too long, because it means that the light goes very bright until the floor. But it cannot be like that, because in this type of bra, it shall be actually spread and softened. So you need to change the intensity, make it smaller, and you also have to go and make the height of the source of the light ray much lower. In other case, we also remember that this bra is actually two-sided. That's been forgotten. And for this case, we need to add the light source that actually goes from the top of the lamp, and that's also not the strong one. It's a very delicate light, and it's easily to do with one of the IES source elements, and just correct it based on the knowledge of the physical world and the needs of your interior design. And I allocate, of course, a lamp. It's a simple one lamp, because that will bring their literally necessary force of the bulb source and lamp. I also would like to change a little bit the pattern and make it a different color based on the color chart we have. The materials here in Archline can work in groups. That's easier to nominate for color board, and here it is. So let's compare the two images, two renderings, and we immediately see the difference between the lamps, the bra, and the left and the right. It's more correct lamps representation. So to go on with interior design, making the digital twin, you have to remember that digital light is no less important than the real light. If you have a good geometry and very bad light, it will not help you to sell your interior design to the client. That means you can even correct the bad geometry with appropriate light. So let's go to the next chapter, and that's called the client's challenge. That was an assignment and a question given by the client who wanted actually to see if that's possible to create something similar to the Zaha Hadid design in Melbourne. This is a Mayfair building. This is an image. It was done by Ellenberger Fraser with the third party involved for the rendering from the big rendering studio. And let's learn the process we've done. Of course, we don't have the precise geometry, and we don't have the knowledge about the light that's been used there. So everything we try to do here, it's just trying to recreate everything we see in the image. For these purposes, we've been using actually their cupboards that's you can find as an inbuilt function in the software. And that supported quite a lot, because we could create curvy surfaces and curvy profiles. We also could combine the elements and create their design that we probably wanted to correct a little bit based on what we see as a realistic one. For example, the door shall close and not just stuck somewhere as it was in the reference image. We also went through and designed some elements coming from the objects that we picked up from the 3D warehouse. You also can do this and go via the sketch mode right inside Archline to correct this. And in our case, I actually corrected these dresses and also put the hangers and combine the elements and of course change the materials to represent more correspondence to the reference image. Very easy to do. So elements of course are quite different, but the appearance more or less bringing the same feeling that it's in the reference image. Some elements are picked up with the materials from outside. These materials are working pretty well in Archline, even though you can see them as black. Some elements are picked up from their catalogs of their brands. That means you can even find the quantity takeoff and price list. Some elements we had to create with construction piecing. That's, for example, column here. It was easier for me to go this way than just to find the table or to create with some kind of elements corresponding to the furniture layout. The lights we had to go were some faking here, a little bit tricky way, because it turned out that the light, when you use it in the way it shall work in the realistic world, wasn't able to represent the same pattern in our rendering in our interior design. So I had to actually to falsify this and just to get the light source and to relocate it right on the wall to get that effect. Pattern for the wall created as the pattern with a metal structure, but you also can go and create it as a tiling. And very useful feature you can find here is a lid light, so you don't need to create anything like just putting the light sources into the lamp. It's just existing inside the software itself. So before rendering, let's check how far the light corresponds to what we need. So we just turn on light and check it in realistic mode with the grayscale function, and we see that it's just falling as we need, and the shadows correspond to the main direction of the light, what we also need. And I'm going with the rendering a little bit more. In this case, it's just a full HD. And here it is, the final result. And here's the result that we had as a reference designed by Zaha Hadid and revealed by Ellenberg Fraser and the third-party studio that actually rendered the full image. So we can see that's possible. At the end, I would like to say what we didn't see today. So you will keep motivation for further research and further learning about software and your opportunities and what you can create as a interior designer. We didn't discuss the documentation, dimensions, and how to form everything on paper and to make an interior design packaging. We didn't discuss sweep. We also didn't discuss the tiling. That's a very useful function. Didn't go through KBB so far, so detailed. Didn't go through electrical accessories. Where we have the lighting plan, and it's a very important part in interior design. We also didn't discuss smart furniture creation, where you can create the sofa yourself. And we didn't go through a very huge blog that is called MEP. MEP is very useful for interior design as well. You can actually check how far your interior functions and also where you need to cover this or that MEP elements inside your interior. And the sketch mode, I didn't touch it so far. I just mentioned that when you have elements you are not satisfied with that you pick up from some other third-party software, you can go and modify them, change colors, combine, create whatever you need, and just create separated pieces that you will put inside your assemblies yourself. Or you, for example, can go and create their furniture or the elements from just 3D shapes, as if you are working in 3D Max. That's also a useful feature that you probably won't find anywhere else. So here we see that just very easy to modify, and then you just save. In our case, I don't need to save because it will change the element in my library. Don't forget that this is a library element. So I encourage you to learn more in our next videos, that you can follow up with the next presenters, or just follow up with me, and maybe one day you will see more presentations with more features to discuss. You can find my profile on LinkedIn. You just can connect me for any questions you have, or you just can follow the email presented here and just send any questions or whatever ideas you have in your mind to share that. For now, I really would like to say thank you, and there is also a bonus and a chat time. For the bonus, please follow the landscape sketch in Archline XP Live, and for the chat time, I welcome you to ask any questions here in the chat. I'm staying with you until the next presenter, so please, I'm here.